G'day art adventurers, my name is Christopher, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to be painting a whole bunch of different ravens on Legion's paper, well, Yupo heavy paper, which is actually a plastic today, and I'm doing that as a fake book cover, or personalized book cover, for the Grimm brothers fairy tale called The Seven Ravens. I'm also doing this as a collab video with a whole bunch of different artists, and I'll put a playlist up for you to check out, and there'll be a link down the bottom where you can see their paintings or works of art and the fairy tale that they are representing. So, lots of stuff going on. Let's get the intro done. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm using Legion's Yupo Heavy paper, which is actually plastic. It's not paper at all. I'm using the 9x12 inch, I believe. Is that right? It is. Yes, the 9x12 inch sheet. And I am also using my M. Graham watercolors. I've got 11 different watercolors and they're in a palette, a little bit spaced out with some gaps. And so hopefully as time goes on, I'll put some more M. Graham paints into the wells that are empty. But at the moment, they're actually quite good as little extra mixing areas. And I love these palettes. I think they called them Magello palettes. I'll try to remember to put a link down below if you've never seen one before. Lots of different people use them. Let's get on to the painting itself. I loosely sketched out some different crows using some references from Pixabay and Unsplash. And also I think some free ones from Google. But I didn't realize that for this paper you can't erase on it aggressively, or not even that aggressively, but when I was erasing or rubbing out, I found that it was damaging the coating or the surface of this paper, which again is actually plastic. It has this glossy coat that's placed on it. I think originally it's for like photo printing paper or poster bill paper or something, some sort of special poster paper for printing presses. But some artists started messing around with it a while back, and then eventually Yupo decided to offer it for people to play on, and now it's branded as the different way to watercolor. And boy, it is an interesting way to watercolor. I find that I can do a kind of Sumier Eastern ink kind of look with it, and that's loose and free and fast. I'm saying it's a style, but actually I've only done this for the second time. I'll put a card up for the first time that I used it back in October last year, and I enjoyed that style, but I didn't get back to using it. At first I was a bit frustrated with the paper because I found that it took like weeks for it to dry, and this one's still a little bit tacky, but I had more success today because after I did the painting, I decided to place it out in the sun for a little while, and that's really helped a lot of it dry off. You cannot use a hairdryer or a heating tool or any sort of heat that's strong heat on this because it's plastic. It's going to warp and even melt. And so I've done loose pencil sketches, but when I erased it, I damaged that coating or surface. So I tried to keep the sketches as loose as possible, but I don't know, I still needed to correct at some places. I did find if I used a kneaded eraser that I could gently roll over the top of it or kind of brush over the top of it, and then that would remove enough of the pencil lines for me to keep going or for me to be happy enough to start painting with. So basically, use a kneaded eraser, not a regular eraser. And for this first crow, raven, whatever, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love ravens. I know a lot of people don't, or crows. I have fond memories from both my home growing up in Australia and also my home in Japan, which might sound strange in the middle of Tokyo, but I lived in this apartment that overlooked this amazing park called Shizen-kyoikuen, or the Institute for Nature Studies and Research. And it's kind of like Tokyo's answer to Central Park, along with Yoyogi Park, I guess. I don't know, Tokyo actually has a lot of parks. It's a greener city than you might imagine. But this space is massive, it's been around for ages, and it has lots of like wild forests and ponds and a huge resident crow population. And if you haven't been to Tokyo, you wouldn't realize, but Tokyo has lots of crows in general, some of the smartest in the world. They like figure out the traffic signals and chase trash, and the cities had to come up with all these different ways to deal with the trash. But not only that, their crows are huge. They are so massive. They're like, I don't know, small dogs or something. They're just so massive. And it's really surprising when you first encounter them, or at least it was for me. And so I just am using 4 different colors. I forget the exact color names, but I'll put them up in post-editing if I remember. But basically, one is, I think, neutral tint. One is the mineral violet. And then there is a turquoise. So I've got those 3 correct. And then the blue, I can't remember the name of it. It might be cobalt blue or something along those lines. But I'm just using those 4 colors and then that's it. And I'm just doing kind of washes with leaving some white space at places. Or at least I'm trying to, but for some of them, I'm more successful than others. And I also, unfortunately, even though I did a thumbnail, I've grouped some of them too close together so that it all becomes a bit of a mess. But I kind of, in some ways, like that approach, that it's sections that are kind of abstract and you have to study to figure out what's going on. And then there's a few other crows. There's one in the top right and 2 down the bottom that I'll get to later, where they just show up clearly because they're on their own. They're still very loose and kind of like an ink style, but they're clear against a white background. But then the other 4 crows, they're all just kind of bleh in together. And so at the moment, I'm just kind of figuring out how to keep going. Remember, it's only the second time I've used this plastic and the water and paint will just flow so easily on it. So you have to kind of be careful. And I haven't used this brush for so long. It's a Japanese or Chinese sumie or ink brush. And so I just thought it would be fun to try out, but I think it borders on being too big. It is a very large brush. And a couple of times I need to switch to a different brush. Particularly for the head and beak and toe areas, I find that hard. Or I found it hard to get precise detail for some of them. And I end up making a couple of mistakes and kind of having a few little splotchy areas that I think I kind of hide all right. If you do have that happen on Yupo paper, you can quickly wet it and then try to dab it up with a tissue and you'll get most of it off or a lot of it off. Particularly if you haven't damaged it with an eraser and it's still got the glossy surface there. And also I just, in post, just changed the brightness and contrast a little bit to get the white back a little bit. But I usually have to do that with a photo at the end anyway. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all the things that I want to talk about for this, except for the fact that, you want to be very, very careful again when using this Yupo paper or plastic, and it's going to take a long time to dry. So just remember to put it somewhere where it can dry without being touched. I've already gotten my sticky fingers into it a little bit by just moving it over to here without thinking. And yeah, if you haven't tried it before, I really recommend it as something fun and different to do with watercolors. And maybe you'll even develop a whole new style with it like I have. That's really loose and fun and free and just interesting to explore. And of course, if you haven't already clicked subscribe and like and left that little notification bell clicked as well, do those things. And of course, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And now, on with the fairy tale. The 7 Ravens, a Grimm Brothers fairy tale. There was once a man who had 7 sons, and last of all, 1 daughter. Although the little girl was very pretty, she was so weak and small that they thought that she could not live. But they said she should be at once christened. So the father sent one of his sons in haste to the spring to get some water. But the other 6 ran with him. Each wanted to be first at drawing the water, and so they were in such a hurry that all let their pitchers fall into the well, and they stood very foolishly looking at one another, and did not know what to do, for none dared go home. In the meantime, the father was uneasy, and could not tell what made the young men stay so long. "Surely," he said, "the whole 7 must have forgotten themselves over some game of play." And when he waited still longer, and they yet did not come, he flew into a rage and wished all turned into ravens. Scarcely had he spoken these words when he heard a croaking over his head, and looked up, and saw 7 ravens as black as coal flying round and round. Sorry as he was to see his wish so fulfilled, he did not know how what was done could be undone, and comforted himself as well as he could for the loss of his 7 sons with his dear little daughter, who became stronger and every day more beautiful. For a long time she did not know that she ever had any brothers, for her father and mother took care not to speak of them before her. But one day, by chance, she heard the people about her speak of them. "Yes," they said, "she is beautiful indeed, but still 'tis a pity that her brothers should have been lost for her sake." Then she was much grieved, and went to her father and mother, and asked if she had any brothers, and what had become of them. So they dared no longer to hide the truth from her, but said it was the will of heaven, and that her birth was only the innocent cause of it. But the little girl mourned sadly about it every day, and thought herself bound to do all she could to bring her brothers back. And she had neither rest nor ease, till at length one day she stole away and set out into the wide world to find her brothers, wherever they might be, and free them, whatever it might cost her. She took nothing with her but a little ring which her father and mother had given her, a loaf of bread in case she should be hungry, a pitcher of water in case she should be thirsty, and a little stool to rest upon should she be weary. Thus she went on, and journeyed till she came to the world's end. Then she came to the sun, but the sun looked much too hot and fiery. So she ran quickly away to the moon, but the moon was cold and chilly. She said, "I smell flesh and blood this way." So she took herself away in a hurry and came to the stars. And the stars were friendly and kind to her, and each star sat upon its own little stool. But the morning star rose up and gave her a little piece of wood, and said, "If you have not this little piece of wood, you cannot unlock the castle that stands on Glass Mountain, and there your brothers live." The little girl took the piece of wood, rolled it up in a little cloth, and went on again until she came to the Glass Mountain, and found the door shut. Then she felt for the little piece of wood, but when she unwrapped the cloth, it was not there, and she saw she had lost the gift of the good stars. What was to be done? She wanted to save her brothers, and had no key of the castle of the Glass Mountain. So this faithful little sister took a knife out of her pocket and cut off her little finger, that was just the size of the piece of wood she had lost, and put it in the door and opened it. As she went in, a little dwarf came up to her and said, "What are you seeking for?" "I seek for my brothers, the 7 ravens," she answered. Then the dwarf said, "My masters are not at home, but if you wait till they come home, pray step in." Now the little dwarf was getting their dinner ready, and he brought their food upon 7 little plates, and their drink in 7 little glasses, and set them upon the table. And out of each little plate their sister ate a small piece, and out of each little glass she drank a small drop. But she let the ring that she had brought with her fall into the last glass. On a sudden she heard a fluttering and croaking in the air, and the dwarf said, "Here come my masters." When they came in, they wanted to eat and drink, and looked for their little plates and glasses. Then said one after the other, "Who has eaten from my little plate? And who has been drinking out of my little glass? Caw, caw, well I ween, mortal lips have this way been." When the 7th came to the bottom of his glass, and found there the ring, he looked at it, and knew that it was his father's and mother's, and said, "Oh, that our little sister would but come, then we should be free." When the little girl heard this, for she stood behind the door all the time and listened, she ran forward, And in an instant, all the ravens took their right form again, and all hugged and kissed each other and went merrily home. I hope you enjoyed the story, guys. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like, and leave me a comment down below if you like the piece or not, and if you're a fan of ravens or not. I just think they're remarkable birds, and so many studies have shown that the corvid family, crows, ravens, and the like, are some of the most intelligent animals on this planet. And they're incredible problem solvers, particularly the crows of Tokyo and New Caledonia, but in general, some of the smartest in the world, period. And so remember that. They even remember your faces if you're nice or mean to them. And I'll see you guys soon for another art adventure. Remember, create more, consume less. Take care.